The receiver who hurt Raider Nation more times than anyone wants to count is being talked about as a potential silver and black, and that conversation is more serious than it sounds. A veteran who played alongside Ashton Jeanty last season just said on camera that he is one of them ones. There is still a wide receiver available who helped his last team reach the Super Bowl and has a direct connection to Kubiak going back years. And Malcolm Koonce posted 15 pressures and 2 sacks in the final 5 weeks of last season. And this defensive line could be something genuinely scary if he brings that into 2026. Stay here with me, Raider Nation. Let's get into the news. A veteran who watched Ashton Jeanty up close every single day last season just went on camera and said something that every person in Raider Nation needed to hear. Raheem Mostert appeared on the set on June 25th and did not hold back. He said Jeanty is one of them ones. He said he is different. He said he has never seen a player run over another player and just keep running the way Jeanty does. He said the jump cuts and acceleration are incredible, that Jeanty could make a jump cut in a phone booth and still make you feel it, and that he has watched him hit a hole, spring out of an arm tackle, and pick up another 30 yards when everyone in the building thought the play was dead. That is a 34-year-old veteran with a Super Bowl ring describing a 21-year-old running back like he is watching something he has genuinely never seen before in his entire career. Now let me put that in context with what the numbers actually say, because I think people undersell how good Jeanty was last season, given everything working against him. He carried the ball 266 times for 975 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, while forcing 61 missed tackles as a runner. He caught 55 passes on 68 targets for 346 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns in the passing game. He finished with over 1,000 yards from scrimmage behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league, with a fired offensive coordinator, and with his stance being changed and then changed back mid-season. That is not a player who survived a difficult situation. That is a player who thrived in one. And Yahoo Sports' Charles McDonald has Jeanty as his breakout player for the 2026 season, arguing that Kubiak's scheme will be an upgrade, that the passing game will be more competent whether it is Cousins or Mendoza, and that the overall infrastructure around him should finally get him over 1,000 rushing yards with a genuinely big year. Here's the part that makes this exciting, beyond just the numbers. Jeanty has never played behind a functional offensive line. He has never played in a system designed to maximize what he does. He has never had a quarterback who commands defensive respect through the air and forces defenses to play honest. All 3 of those things exist in Las Vegas in 2026. Mostert said he is one of them ones. He is right. And Raider Nation has not even seen the real version of Ashton Jeanty yet. And while Jeanty has never had the weapons around him that he deserves, there is a veteran wide receiver still available in free agency who could change that picture immediately. And his connection to Klint Kubiak goes back further than most people realize. Stefon Diggs worked with Kubiak during his time with the Minnesota Vikings, and that familiarity is not a small thing when you are talking about installing a new offense with a rookie franchise quarterback and a 37-year-old veteran who needs to get everyone on the same page as fast as possible. Diggs was the #1 receiver for the New England Patriots last season. He helped that team reach the Super Bowl. He caught 85 passes for 1,013 yards and 4 touchdowns during the regular season, and then added 20 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown across 4 playoff games. That is a player who performed at a high level under playoff pressure at an age when most people assumed his best football was behind him. And he is still sitting in free agency, waiting for a team to recognize what he still brings. Now let me be direct about why Diggs specifically makes more sense for the Raiders than any other name still available. He already understands how Kubiak thinks offensively. He knows the concepts, the spacing, the timing of the routes that make this system function at its ceiling. He is not walking into a new environment trying to build chemistry with a coaching staff and a quarterback from scratch while a regular season is already underway. He arrives calibrated. Kirk Cousins also has history with Diggs from their time together in Minnesota, which means the quarterback-receiver connection that takes most players months to develop is already there from day one. And for Fernando Mendoza, having a veteran receiver with Super Bowl experience in the same room is exactly the kind of influence that accelerates a young quarterback's understanding of how to navigate an NFL offense under real pressure. The Raiders' receiver room right now has youth, athleticism, and promise. What it does not have is a proven number one option who has been the guy in a real offensive system against real defenses when the stakes were highest. Diggs has been that player. He was that player last season, and he is available right now for a price that will not compromise this team's future flexibility. The window to make this call is not going to stay open forever. Another team is going to recognize what Diggs still brings before this offseason ends. Make the move before that happens. And while that conversation is about a receiver who knows Kubiak's system from the inside, this next one is about a receiver who knows Raider Nation from a completely different angle. And the irony of this situation is almost too good to ignore. Tyreek Hill has hurt this fan base more times than anyone wants to count. He has scored touchdowns against this defense that still live in the nightmares of anyone who was watching. He has made Raiders cornerbacks look like they were standing still on plays that ended highlight reels across the league. And now his name is being discussed as a potential silver and black. Actually, wait, let me back up. Because before anyone dismisses this as a fantasy, the model being discussed here is low risk and high reward, which is exactly the kind of addition that makes sense for a team that still has real questions at the receiver position. Hill is coming off an injury, and his status for Week 1 is unclear. That uncertainty is precisely why he is still available, and precisely why the cost of signing him would be far below what his talent would normally command on the open market. If he comes in healthy and ready to play, this offense immediately has something it currently does not have. A receiver so fast that defenses have to account for him on every single snap, regardless of where he lines up. Think about what that does for everything else around him. If a safety has to cheat toward Hill on the outside, that opens the middle of the field for Brock Bowers. If a cornerback is terrified of getting beaten deep, that creates underneath windows for Jeanty and the short passing game that Kirk Cousins thrives in. Speed at the receiver position does not just produce plays for the fast receiver, it changes the math for everyone else on the field. Now, I want to be honest about the risks because they are real. Hill is coming off an injury, and his availability for Week 1 is not guaranteed. He is not the same player he was at his absolute peak, and nobody should pretend otherwise. But on a low-risk deal with incentives tied to availability and production, the downside is minimal, and the upside is one of the most electrifying weapons in NFL history, wearing silver and black. Raider Nation watched Hill destroy this defense for years. The idea of watching him do that to someone else's defense instead is a conversation worth having seriously before training camp opens. And while the offense gets all the attention this offseason, there is a player on the defensive side of this roster who quietly showed in the final 5 weeks of last season that the version of him everyone has been waiting for is still in there. And his name is Malcolm Koonce. From weeks 14 through 18 of the 2025 season, with Maxx Crosby on injured reserve and the pressure off, Koonce posted 15 total pressures, 2 sacks, and a pass rush win rate of 17%, according to Pro Football Focus. That is not a fluke sample. That is a player who is finally getting consistent snaps, showing exactly what he can do when given real opportunity. And it mirrors almost exactly what he showed in the second half of 2023, when he erupted for 52 pressures and 8 sacks under Antonio Pierce, and looked like he was about to form one of the most dangerous pass rush duos in the AFC alongside Crosby. Then the ACL tear happened before the 2024 season even started. He missed the entire year. He came back in 2025 and spent most of the season fighting for snaps behind players who frankly should not have been ahead of him. And even then, when the door finally opened at the end of the year, he reminded everyone watching exactly why Rob Leonard fought to bring him back to this organization. Leonard has been the defensive line coach since 2023. He watched Koonce from the sideline during that 2023 explosion. He knows what this player is capable of when the conditions are right and the confidence is there. And the conditions in 2026 are better than they have ever been for Koonce to finally have a full season where he is a trusted part of this defensive front rather than a player fighting for scraps. Kwity Paye is here now on a 3-year deal. Adam Butler is back. The scheme is a 3-4 that Leonard has been designing specifically around the personnel he has. And Maxx Crosby, by every account coming out of this offseason, is playing with a chip on his shoulder after the failed Baltimore trade and is locked in to prove that what happened last year was the exception and not the rule. Now imagine what this defensive front looks like when Crosby is fully healthy and motivated, Paye is occupying blockers on the strong side, and Koonce is operating as a genuine threat off the edge with the confidence of someone who knows Leonard believes in him. Opposing offensive coordinators in the AFC West have been game planning around one dominant pass rusher for years. In 2026, they might have to account for three. Well, Raider Nation, here is what today actually told us about where this team is heading. Ashton Jeanty has never played with real infrastructure around him, and a veteran who watched him every day last season just told you he is one of them ones. Wait until he has a real offensive line, a real quarterback, and a real system around him. Stefon Diggs is still available, knows Kubiak's system from Minnesota, and was the #1 receiver on a Super Bowl team last season. That phone call needs to happen before someone else makes it. Tyreek Hill on a low-risk deal is the kind of move that changes the math of this entire offense for every other player on the field. And the irony of watching him destroy someone else's defense instead of ours is a story Raider Nation would love to tell. And Malcolm Koonce quietly showed in the final 5 weeks of last season that the 2023 version of him is still alive. Put him next to a motivated Maxx Crosby and Kwity Paye in Rob Leonard's 3-4, and this defensive front becomes a real problem for the AFC West. This roster is not finished, but it is closer than people think. Drop your take in the comments. This space belongs to everyone who lives by just win, baby, and never walked away from the silver and black.